Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Karen McMullen, and I'm a New York City based film editor and educator and film festival programmer. I work for a number of festivals around the city. I work for Tribeca and Doc NYC, the Tide Film Festival, but the festival that's nearest to my home is the African Film Festival. Thank you for joining us today. We're here talking with filmmaker Ngozi Onwurah, and she's going to talk to us about her two wonderful films that you've seen in this series, Coffee Colored Children and Shoot the Messenger. Welcome, Ngozi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you doing? How's quarantine treating you?
I don't know how to answer that question anymore. I do have toilet roll. So,
It's come to that.
yeah.
No toilet paper, right? So there's so much to talk about in your films. I first saw Coffee Colored Children years ago at a Woman Makes Movie screening, I believe, in the city. And it stuck with me all these years. And I watched it again when I knew I was going to speak with you. And, the scene with the white guy smearing the feces on the door is still as chilling now as it was then. So your um, one white mother and your Nigerian father has influenced a lot of your worldview, of course, and your work. So let's talk a little bit about the short first, and we'll hop into the feature. Is that okay? So this is a semi-autobiographical piece, right?
I
Talk
would say Coffee Colored Children is entirely biographical.
entirely, okay.
It didn't happen.
Talk to us about what it's like putting some of your more poignant and painful memories on screen.
So that's what's really funny about the whole Coffee Colored Children thing. So many people say that, it was really brave and it was really to put it all out there and be so personal and what have you. But really, all that stuff was inside me, and really, I just couldn't move on. I had to make that film in order to move on. There was no alternative. It was part. The film itself was part of me defining me and me dealing with my past. And I guess if I'd lived in LA, I would have gone to a therapist, but I didn't. So I made the film instead, and there was just no alternative but do those things that say those things and do those things because that is the story of what happened. And for instance, the scene that you talked about with the white boy, the white skinhead, sorry, smearing the door with dog poo. I mean, that was an incredible scene to film and see because the thing is, as you're growing up and these things are happening to you, you're the one that internalizes the shame about the things that are happening. And the shame that the dog poo was on our door, nobody else's door, that it was my mum that had to clear it because she had darky children and da 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 da. But when you saw the visualization of the scene, when you saw the guy, and I saw it, yeah, the guy doing that to our front door, it was almost like it brought my sanity back. It was like, no, that was completely obscene. That was an obscene, horrible, nasty thing to do. And I was right to be upset about it. And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my mum's fault. It kind of made me feel sane again as well when you actually see it
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm. That's great. So it seems like it served its purpose of clearing your head so that you can move on with your life. Because
Yes,
one of the last lines in your film was you didn't want to, something to the effect of you didn't want to have children because you didn't want to give your child to a world that was so ugly. I don't remember the
wasn't
exact
ready
wording.
for the child. Because a lot of times with biracial children, they're often seen as the evidence that the world is uh, beautiful and people are coming together, or they feel an incredible pressure to be the kind of the in betweens, the people that talk to these and listen, bring them together. And what I was saying at the end of the film was that isn't something that should be put on biracial kids, and the world wasn't ready to accept my children if they were biracial because it needed biracial children to truly exist fully as themselves completely. They need a world in which that racism doesn't exist almost, yeah, because they are, and that just doesn't happen. So until it was a better situation, I wasn't going to bring my child into that world.
Mhm. But you've gone ahead and you've brought
But
some.
yes, yeah, no. Um, so because that stuck with me, that really stuck with me. And another thing that happened as I was growing up was when we came from Nigeria, we came with my mum by herself. My dad stayed behind in Nigeria, and my mum is the white parent, and she had cancer. She had actually quite advanced cancer, so she had to undergo a lot of chemo and a lot of sessions and everything. So we were put into foster care quite often, uh, and sometimes long term like a few months. And in the homes that we were in, the children were in children's homes. There were never any. There were a lot of black children there in a city with hardly any black people. We went into the children's home and it was like, oh, this is where they all are. And they were the kids that never got taken out. They were the kids that didn't get foster parents. And I remember so two things. I remember when I was there saying, okay, when I'm grown up, I am going to adopt or foster children because I am going to be the one that comes through the door, and the black and the brown kids know that they have a chance rather than just the white people coming through the door. And that stuck with me my whole time. And I ended up my first child was actually adopted from Nigeria because it was something I was going to do. But then what happened was it was so perfect what happened with my daughter that my husband and I got really, really scared about how we could replicate it, how we could make it happen in exactly the same way again. But she was just awesome and it just worked so wonderfully. So then we decided to have a birth child because I didn't know how to do it again the way I did it with my daughter. Mm-hmm. I have one. I did it once and I didn't do it the other time. Answer your question.
Very nice. Okay, let's move on to the feature because there's so much to talk about there. Shoot the Messenger. I don't know how it is that I managed not to see this film when it came out in 2006, but I just saw it recently and I was blown away. I thought it was so clever, so brilliant, so incisive. And so you take us on a journey with Joe, who is something of an anti-hero. Credit to David Oyelowo because he somehow makes this guy likable, even though he's spouting all this craziness. So he's always spouting this anti-black sentiment, and you're dealing with issues here of internalized racism, not too far off what you were dealing with in the first film. But the internalized racism is not something we see a lot on film. Can you talk about tackling that theme for us all to see?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it starts with the writer Sharon, and although it's not autobiographical, of course, the film for her, what it was it came from a place in her. She had some disabilities, and she was growing up in London, and she'd gone through the foster care system as well, and not for long, not the way, but she'd been in there. And basically, she felt on a lot of levels rejected by the black community herself, especially by black men. She wasn't attractive. She wasn't. They didn't see her. So there was a place of hurt, and I think when she says this, there was a place of hurt inside her for her relationship within the black community, and 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 then that whole idea of the things that we do to ourselves in terms of trying to straightening our hair, sleeping with clips on our noses, all these things that would just never really be explored. So that was her starting point from the film, and she always said, I was the director, so I got, when some of the reviews or some of the feedback came out when the film first came out, there was some negativity from black people. On the whole, not, but I'm just saying there was some pushback. But she got it the most because she was the writer, so they understood that it was coming from inside her head.
Mhm.
And she just kept saying over and over again, and it's the same for Joe. It's the fact that she loved being black and loved being in the black community so much that when she was rejected, it hurt all the more. So it was kind of like, it's dealing with, yes, it's in dealing with internalized racism, but it's also dealing with your her own relationship and the kind of what racism has done as well to us as a community in terms of how we look at different things.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I can understand that. It's funny because it's not such a unique story because a lot of us, in America and other countries, we suffer from this internalized racism, and I've suffered greatly at the hands of other black people who have things to say about how black I was or how black I wasn't or how dark I was or wasn't or nappy my hair was or wasn't. And it's really insidious that we do this. But so it was brave of you. I mean, you didn't write the story, but you did choose the story to tell this story and put it on screen and to, air our dirty laundry. This is something that Black people talk about amongst ourselves often, but not on the big screen. So, did you get pushback? And were the critics kind to you?
Well, like I said, we did get pushback. I mean, on the whole, we didn't. And on the whole, black people were, in Britain especially, were really receptive to it because I think, there were two black stories that were being told. There was always this one about, oppression or slavery or our kind of, how painful basically it is to be black and how hard it is and da 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 da. And I'm not putting those stories down. We need those stories there, but I'm saying, and then the other story was comedies, like lots of, you know,
Yeah.
black being, fun, dancing, making jokes. And
Mm.
basically, they were the only two narratives that really got any mainstream exposure. And mainly it was the latter. Mainly it was lots of, Beverly Hills Cop, lots of black comedies. So
Mhm.
there was a hunger to see something different, like a different story. And that's the point, because white people have told so many stories. They've got every variation of stories out there. But black stories, there's so much about so limited what we had, especially then. Things have moved on. So there was a real hunger to talk about it, and there was an acknowledgement that we can't be restrained as artists or filmmakers or consumers by how other people see us. Yeah, so we can't, that old thing about I hate eating fried chicken in public because when people look at me, they think, oh yeah, there's another black person eating fried chicken, but I love fried chicken. Yeah, so
Mhm.
there's this way that we feel that we as individuals represent the entire community. We are judged by the entire community, and we must represent the entire time. And that really limits the discourse. It really limits what is being said. Television, movies, that's our space too. Yeah. So if
Mhm.
we want to make these kind of stories, we can make them, and we don't always have to think, oh my God, there's these people listening in, and how will they perceive it? Because that will just stunt us continually. We won't get to do it. So there was a huge acknowledgement of that, and but there was definitely some pushback. There was definitely some people that said, "Look, this is yes, I get it, but this is what we need to talk to about amongst ourselves. But you can't limit yourself, otherwise you have to wait to have complicated
Mhm.
discussions or show other parts of yourself." And I was very, very happy to do that. I mean, Sharon's original title for the script was "Fuck Black People."
Oh
So
my.
Sharon even sent me the script, but um, it was written with so much love a sympathetic character, but I always found him a sympathetic character because he was doing it from a position of, it wasn't from hatred, it was the opposite. He wanted to be he wanted to be a part of it.
Right. I mean, he says as much at the beginning of the film. He said that he had a good job. He left a good paying job to go help black children.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. So yeah, it's all right there. But it was very cleverly done, the breaking the fourth wall and the saturated reds in the scene, and, the soundtrack. I really feel like it was ahead of its time. What did you say?
I said, you noticed the thing about the red. So that's good.
Yeah. Yes. What was that about? Can you talk about that, Joy?
No, I mean it was really a creative thing. It was just that I wanted to get the visualizations of those worlds really right as a filmmaker. But as you know, or maybe you don't, but I'm Nigerian and Sharon was West Indian. And when you go to when you go to your mom's houses or those houses, yeah, they intend to be incredibly cluttered and storage and don't throw this away and this for this and pans for this and that aesthetic, it can be quite complicated on screen and it can also be quite, it gives it a documentary feel and all. So I was trying to find a way to represent that correctly on screen but not for it to kind of cloud the screen or mess the screen up. So the rule was we couldn't have any pattern things, and we were going for block colors. But when we were trying to say something, when I wanted it to pop, the only color that was allowed to pop was the red. So we could have this we could have color representation, but in a subdued background, which also represented the world that Joe was was living in. So it was a bit of an art. It was a bit of an arty thing. You know what I mean? A bit
Mhm.
art.
But it was fun. It was, your film had a lot of surprises in it. There's nothing formulaic or, expected or stereotypical about it at all. Um, and so, how are you feeling nowadays? I feel like black filmmakers were in that box you're talking about, constricted to telling the five stories that we're allowed to tell. And now we have, Get Out and Black Panther and, A Wrinkle in Time, just like the whole spectrum of things. How are you feeling?
No, I think that's great. And Steve McQueen, who's just done this really great series for British television, he said, we need to be able to make our crap films. We need to make our art. We need to make da 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 da. And I think we are getting there. I think it's amazing. I just think it's like, when I went to see Black Panther, I'm not a superhero fan, but it was like I realized, oh my god, I've been waiting for this film my whole life, and I didn't know I'd been waiting for it. It was just
Yeah, we all were. We are.
we all felt that, yeah. But my kids are their expectations now are much higher. So I look back and think, isn't it great? We have superhero, we have comedies, we have this, we have that, we have the other, and they're happy. My kids are happy, but they want more. They notice their baseline is higher than our baseline was. So it's like there is still a long way to go, but it's so great that you can go and see a film like Moonlight, you can go and see a horror movie, you can see that, and we don't get killed in the first act, and it's just I love it. But obviously, there's an incredible amount of work to still do, but it's so much better than when I was.
Yeah. It's a luxury for our kids. They grew up most of their life, they had a black president, if they're
Exactly.
American. It's a luxury that they get to be critical,
Yeah.
and demand a certain level and not have to see every black film that comes out just because it's the black film that's out right now. So we're progress is being made. I'm very encouraged.
It really is. It really is. It's a long way to go, but it's such, you know, even slim. Like, you've just got a whole different ranges of films out there. They tend only to be the one or the two, but it's there. There was one fantastic week when I think I could choose between Kevin Hart had just released something, and there was it Get Out, and there was Moonlight. There was just I can't remember what this, but it was just, I could like, oh, I can go and see a horror movie tonight. Oh, I can see a love story. Oh, 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 and I was brilliant.
So speaking of the Hollywood thing, you got to work with David Oyelowo when he was younger, before he did his Black Panther and I'm sorry, The Butler and Selma and Queen of Katwe, and Daniel Kaluuya, who did Black Panther and Get Out. How did you come across these? Did you recognize that they were going to be the stars that they have become?
David for sure, and to be honest, David was he was in a reasonably big TV show in England at the time. I forgot Spooks. And he'd been at the Royal Shakespeare Company, so I don't think I didn't discover him. And I really wanted to work with him. He's just great on set. He's so collaborative and so. I don't think it's by accident that he's worked with a lot of female directors because he is a really strong presence on set. With Daniel, it was a whole different process because it was his very, very first speaking role, very first paid role, everything. And it was a group of 4 kids, young men. It was very hard to get actors that young with experience, and it was still one of the best experiences I've had because they were so excited because they were like young black men from essentially working class backgrounds. They're not the kind of people the BBC normally rang up to be anything other than criminals in the bill or which is equivalent of like a talk show. So and they were all just so receptive and they stayed longer, they came earlier. And the thing with Daniel was when it wasn't his scenes, he would still be, he didn't have a big part, but he was watching the whole time, he was looking and he was listening. And I am not the least bit surprised that he's gone on to be who he is.
Yeah, it's nice to see. I rewound it a couple times. Like, is that him? It's like, yes, it is him.
Yeah, he was a baby. They were baby. Maybe he was even 16, and I remember him saying, "Oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life." Mm-hmm. And luckily enough, he is.
Yeah. So what have you been doing in quarantine? What are you doing to stay creative?
I don't know. No, well, my plan was I took some time out to write a novel. Yeah. It was actually originally a commission from the BBC, but it's set in Africa and Britain, and it was a period, and it had a war going on and everything. The BBC didn't make it because of the expense, because it was a war period. So I decided to write it as a novel because in a novel you can write what you want. You can write in the middle of night, 300 aeroplanes, kamikaze. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. It's on the page. You don't have to replicate it.
Right.
But it's intense because it's semi-autobiographical. It was very intense, and also it's very different writing a novel to writing a script. You have to put so much descriptive stuff in. It's like suddenly I have to describe the tree instead of saying the tree. So the plan was that I finished the first draft, which I did, and I'd written a short, and we were supposed to start shooting that short. And then COVID happened. We just kept putting it back 2 months at a time. We can't absorb that level of cost in terms of COVID, making things COVID safe. The catering has to work, the set has to work, everything. It's adding a lot of money to budget. So because what I wanted to do was I wanted to put the manuscript to one side for 6 or 7 months and then come back and do the second draft completely fresh. But basically now we've put off the film until summer 21, because I don't think this world is going to change properly until summer 21. And so I've been writing again and start working on a mini series for Nigeria. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. A lot of teaching, a lot of panels, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. Great. What do you teach?
Film, women in film, Black history, film.
All the above.
Yeah.
Well, it was really nice catching up with you and talking to you about your work. I am a fan. I'm looking forward to seeing what you create next. And we get to see your voice unadulterated as a novel. It will be a treat. So thank you so much, Ngozi. It's great talking to you. Thank everybody tuning in for joining us today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the AFF series.